The pin. Elias. The pin. I, okay. Then 11. Yes. Perfect. Thank you. You have it? What? Yeah. Ah, if you want, okay, okay, if you want. What you send me?
Yes.
Where is it?
I sent it to you.
Yes, I need to wait. Yes. For now,
Eiglad, sì.
sorry.
You should be sorry.
You should be sorry. And you should find a chair. You should find a chair. I'm presenting two books out of four. So what do you think I'm doing? I'm presenting not mine, but you and you. May I?
I'm presenting the presenters.
Okay. So you, you have something to Rouhette. Yeah. See, what? So,
So, you're gonna.
This starts their books and then out. Like the order, like in the order of the. Yeah.
I've been waiting. What you think?
Which one is that?
Yours.
The order of the thing. You know,
Welcome back. I hope you're not very tired, you're not exhausted. Because the night is long. Okay, we're going to begin a book presentation. Tarinski's book, Reclaiming Cities. And then we will proceed the Greek publication of Communalism as Alternative, which is Eric Egglad's book and has been translated by after Lexi published. Okay.
Okay, so the book Reclaiming Cities was published by Black Rose Books last year, but it was but we never did a proper presentation, a proper book launch. So we thought that this now gives us a good occasion to say a few words about it. And if you find it interesting, you can order it from the web page of Black Rose Books. Since all the copies that we get here are finished now. So, why I wrote this book? It's like the other book that I had written, it was provoked by my participation in social movements and in my interest in social change. I genuinely believe that things can be changed radically. And while I'm reading, I'm also putting my thoughts on what I'm reading on paper. And while I participate, I do the same. And then I distill them into a text. And then when the text is at satisfactory level for me, I proceed to turn it into a book. And so the same happened with this book. The question of cities throughout the years has become an increasingly of an increasing interest for me, not only because the bigger part of humanity lives in cities, but because historically the city was a very important site. In a spatial and in temporal manner. Like Eric Eiglad has said in his book Communalism as Alternative, which later on will be presented, the nation state was born in the countryside. The freedom, the project of freedom was born in the cities. But this book is not so much on urbanism or on architecture, but it is actually a philosophical and theoretical exploration of the possibilities that the conditions of urban life and the identity of the citizen offer for the revolutionary project today. This is the main thing that concerns me. And that's why the book is separated in two chapters. The first one is cities with several sub-chapters, and then a second one called citizens, which is also separated in several sub-chapters. In the first one, I discuss about the potentials of urban life to offer special building blocks on which a freer society that is not connected to bloodlines or to other more intimate modes, but it's actually built on political agreement. Also, the potential of cities playing a role in the struggle against imperialism. There is a whole chapter dedicated to this issue. It's my greatest conviction that a nation state is an indispensable part of capitalism. Capitalism is impossible to function without a nation state. And Murray Bookchin, in an interview for a libertarian journal, Reason, when asked what does he think of the rising back then right-wing libertarians, he says that, paraphrasing here, he finds it naive that they believe that there can be a society where the state is being kept at its total bare minimum. So continuing afterwards, saying that the state in its bare minimum is a police state, and the capitalist market needs this police state. We have seen it in the capitalist utopia, in quotation marks, of Pinochet's Chile. So what I try to examine throughout different historic experiences and movements, reaching to certain municipalities in Rojava, in northeast Syria, as well as some neighborhoods in Athens, like in Suidica, as well as in Latin America and elsewhere, of the potential they give us to organize on the basis of political agreement. And then, in relation to the identity of the citizen, I continue from where the likes of Caspiaris and Bookchin leave it, arguing that it is much more preferable identity than the one of the worker, since worker is an economic, mainly economic category, while the citizen has to do with the management of the whole. And this is something that I argue is very important, that we dare to challenge and to propose something on the scale of the whole city, of the whole community, of the whole society, a regime, as Castrialis was saying, and not just a community experiment on small scale, to dare to challenge the way, the system. I also examine the question of temporality. One of the things that has made many people since the 2008 financial collapse to seek refuge in an agrarian life that probably never existed as the utopian way that they try to imagine it, was due, in a sense, a result of the capitalist time is money temporality, which makes us think, following the logic of constant economic growth, that things must happen quickly. We need to go straight line from point A to point B, no setbacks, and when things don't happen, we, as good consumers, we try to find something else so that we can move forward. And that's why many people thought that they will retreat. This was the case in Greece, this was the case in Spain and in many other places. They thought that returning to a pristine nature, to agrarian communes or something, things will be much different. It appeared that it's not so. Many people returned back to the cities very much disappointed. And I suggest that we have to look at the issue of temporality from a different perspective, from a direct democratic perspective. The temporality of direct democracy is very different from the temporality of bureaucracy and capitalism. The temporality of direct democracy is slow, and I refer to Christine Ross, the author of Communal Luxury, who, after traveling to the occupation of ZAD in France, reflects the different way time operates in the occupied ZAD. It was not so much that it was a rural area, but it was because of the way things were organized. Like she says, in the huge American metropolitan areas, like she said, on the everyday level, you get the feeling that time is racing. Time is never enough. But in the same time, on the larger scale, it always feels like there is a deja vu. Nothing really changes. The time is stagnated. It's all in a sense on repeat or moving extremely slowly. On the other hand, she says, when going to ZAD, it was the other way around. The experience of the everyday cycle of the time was much slower, much chiller. Like she said, you have the feeling that you have the feeling that you can do many, many, many things. And in the same moment, looking on the grander scale, it seems that the time is racing. There are constant changes, constant events of great significance. And so she said that she was returning to ZAD several times just to experience this feeling. And I argue that it is on the basis of this relationships of political, direct participatory relationships, that we can reclaim this type of chronology of temporality in a similar way that the Yellow Vests in France tried to do a couple of years ago when they refused the official calendar, when they continue counting the months from where they left, trying to show that things haven't changed, we are not turning a new page. Also, doing their huge demonstrations on weekends, when supposedly the weekend is the day to have a break from the hard work. They said no, this is the time for politics. The leisure time for us is not just consumption, it is also political participation, is much more important than consumption. And this is the ultimate call that I try to articulate with this book, that we need to re-articulate a coherent political project that will propose institutions that are capable to coordinate communities and on a larger scale that can fit in a very different people, because there is never a revolution of homogeneous people. While the dominant imaginary can change, there will be all kinds of people. We know it from the experience of Marina Leda, of the Zapatistas, of even communities here, like the Prosperika. We know that different people can inhabit the same community, and we need to articulate such proposal that they can consist of such diverse people without imposing a homogeneous identity and the worldview which will ultimately lead us to totalitarianism. So I give now the word to Alexis.
Good evening to all again. I will be brief because I will be presenting a Greek book. Not written by a Greek translation of Eiglad's United and Communalism, presenting us the political philosophy of marriage. I'm going to talk about why this book in Greek is important for us, and this is because of a lack, I would say, of important political figures in Greek geography and literature. In order to understand this and why, whereas the ideas of Huxley are being highly discussed in Middle East, in Greece is more or less unknown, except for specific radical political circles. I should just give you some indicators of the peculiarity of the Greek situation. The Greek people, the Greek people living today have been subjected to a highly concentrated nationalistic paradigm narrative, which is, for example, that Greece is homogeneous, the most homogeneous place in the Balkans, the only one. That Greece is directly related to ancient Greek culture without any reference, of course, to the practice of democracy as they were. And more or less, that the Greek, how could I say, bibliography and literature should look backward. For example, I grew up being an anarchist. I never heard the name of Nestor Magno and the platform of Nestor Magno until 2003, where we found it, reading English and translating. We never knew the debates of Bakunin. We never knew the debates between the platformists and the Kropotkin and the anarcho-syndicalists. We never discussed about that. We were anarchists. Why? Because we were trying to find a revolutionary space that was the young reformist Stalinist party, which has dominated Greek politics so much that nowadays the government respects only the communist Stalinist party, which of course is a force of, as you can say, still conservative. But in Greece, we have two blocks. The first block comes from from the Roman times, and it is what one of the biggest Greek poets, George Severis, used to call, how can I say, the official Greek paradigm, which looks backward to Plato. So in Greece, until 1974, we had two languages, two types of Greek. We have the official language, which was, I would say, how can I say, an artificial language created by the state in a way to to revive ancient Greek in order to prove, that what the Greek state sells, ancient Greeks, you understand? The Greek sells is more important culturally from its actual power and its actual wealth, the reference of ancient Greece. Athens is a touristic part of the city now. And the fact is that that which was from ancient times, the reference to Plato as the perfect Greek, and the, how can I say, conservatism that is inherent in Greek culture. We are taught that we are an ancient culture, but if you read actual linguists, you will see that it is a conservative language, Greek. And that is because we refer to Plato, blah, blah, blah. It is. And the other thing is that until 1990, the other paradigm, the radical paradigm, was dominated by the communist Stalinist party, dominating politics. I was lucky enough to be born in 1978, so I was 12 years old in 19. When the Soviet Union fell, so we were able to see what are the radical ideas. Well, we found what? We found minor anarchist collective that were anti-state, but more or less in a certain fun idea rather than having a knowledge of actual political history. So what's happening now is that after the exile is one of the self-organized publishing houses that tries to fill this gap of history and tries to bring us again in contact with the true history of radical movement. And that's how we understood that it was not absolute Marxism. I had to meet personally, Howard Zinn to understand that in America, Marxism was not the dominant counter narrative. There are many now, and Marxism was one of them. And of course, the same thing applies to everything that has to do with a different narrative. I mean, any effort to refer to a revolutionary past in Europe and the States that is not inside the dominant communist narrative is off the question. Now, this goes to the state until in the beginning of 1990s, things crumbled and things and how can I say, the literature, revolutionary literature of other places in Europe was more available to us. And I know that because I was in the group that first translated the platform of Nestor Makhno, and we were in the first anarchist magazine that tried to see what is democratic initiative in municipalism and what does Booksin actually propose, what does Castoriadis propose. I mean, we're starting to find the step towards getting in line with the revolutionary movement globally, not just our own narrative. You don't expect that Greece is an open society. It's the most conservative society in the Balkans. You can understand the only place in the Balkans that demands to be 90% 90% Greek, can you imagine what the Balkans is? What is the history of a country that claims to have 90% homogeneous population? It's a history of violence. You understand that? And that is Greece. So, what Orthodoxy does is trying to bring into light the other types of narratives and the other types of history that is our own history, that's the history of the quest for autonomy. And that involves Marx, but not Stalin. We have to be able to make those distinctions so as not to find ourselves again having 4 years of social struggles from 2004 until 2000, from 2008, not 6 years, until 2014, only to put into power a conservative right-wing party which was so much, how can I say, in favor of governing with a nationalist right-wing party. And now we hear that the leftists and all the radical ideas in Greece have failed because what? This party is not in power. We can understand that books in Greece are necessary. And these efforts that Orthodoxy does is necessary because Yavor, who is one of the, he's next to me, that's right, and Ioanna are not making any profit from it. Instead of going for spending their efforts in a private manner, they try to spend their efforts, we try to spend our efforts in order to open up those discussions because we understand that capitalism is not the dominant imaginary. It's the dominant imaginary of the scale. And there is scale. But we see that people are moving. We see societies in the movement. And we see them very, how can I say, close to our time. 2011, 2012 was very close to our time. And of course, we didn't win. It would be stupid if we wanted to win like that. But the ideas that bring us together enough day in this street in order to meet each other and speak about that, I think is something that is beyond our own personal experience, and it is opening up to a future that, how can I say, is not controllable. That's how I became an artist. You understand? I read a book. So, this book brings us in more contact with the thought of Mari Bookchin. I believe that it is a very important book in order to start discussing the truly revolutionary perspectives of today and get ourselves liberated from the tradition that we have been imposed to years. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Already, no? The transition. Yeah. Yeah, on va faire. Faut que c'est close quand même. Ah, oui. Oui, oui, après, il y a nous. We can do first. Right. Okay, so yes, now we'll move on to the second block of books. So we have two book launches that are more like book announcements because they are not here physically to you cannot buy them now, but they will be published very soon. So that's why we really wanted to announce them. So the first one is a book by Romero, who is right here, acting here now with the social ecology of Murray Bookchin. So this is also like the book of Eric Eiglad, the translation. So this book was actually published in French first about 5 years ago. And yeah, and then there was another edition in Spanish. So let's say that it was a natural step to publish something in English, especially because we are talking about some content, so written in a French and a Spanish context. As Flora will say, he works in both countries, so it has that that origin, that purpose, and we really wanted also to bring it well to the English readership, no, so that we can share some of the things. That Flora can share some of the things related to, especially to the Spanish context, no. So we published the book with New Compass. They are fellow comrades from Scandinavia that have been involved and are still involved in TRISE activities. So it's very nice to be able to have that publication with them. So again, the book is not available now, but it will be in the coming months. So yeah, now Floral can give a little summary of the structure, the content, and what the book has to say. No, so Floral, and I will make the translation.
Ouais, je veux dire que ça fait drôle de parler devant des gens qui t'entendent pas. Parce que
Yeah, that
je suis
it's
habitué à parler en français, en espagnol.
yeah, that is the first time that he speaks in to an audience that doesn't understand, so it's a bit weird, but we will make it work.
Oui, alors, oui, moi je reprends souvent une phrase, un dicton, un proverbe chinois qui dit, ça s'écrit pareil, opportunité, crise et opportunité en chinois s'écrivent de la même façon.
Right. So the starting point is to think of a Chinese proverb, no, that says that opportunity and crisis in Chinese are actually the same words.
Et bon, c'est ce qui m'est arrivé, et c'est quand j'ai eu une crise dans mes activités sociales et politiques que je me suis aperçu qu'il y avait quelque chose qui n'allait pas.
Okay.
Hein.
So that's when
J'étais dans un éco-village, je faisais chez promouvoir un éco-village et j'ai vu les limites que ça pouvait avoir.
so he was working in the Nico village community, and so there was many things that were not working at that time, and so it's basically through this moment of crisis that he opened up his mind to new ideas and from where this development comes from. No?
Et donc à ce moment-là, il y avait le pape de l'écologie, de la décroissance. Ah, ah d'accord, mais ça va.
Okay.
Je disais que ce livre fait suite à un autre livre que j'avais écrit auparavant avec Vincent Gerbert, qui avait été sollicité pour écrire dans les précurseurs de la décroissance, la collection des précurseurs de la décroissance sur Murray Bookchin. Et lui, il avait déjà fait une biographie de Murray Bookchin, donc celui qui menait, en fait, comment il s'appelle, celui qui menait la décroissance en France, je ne me rappelle plus son nom, peu importe, Serge Latou, donc lui avait demandé de faire quelque chose. Il dit, je ne me sens pas, est-ce que toi tu veux le faire? Et moi, je n'étais pas très bien, mais c'était l'opportunité de sortir de l'impasse dans laquelle j'étais. Et donc, j'ai dit à Vincent, on va écrire ensemble, qu'est-ce que tu en penses? On a écrit un livre ensemble,
Okay.
et
I
voilà.
have to translate something.
On me donne l'opportunité de parler en français, je parle.
Yeah, for one person, so maybe the rest have bad memory, so it's so yes. There was there was another proposal of a project in French. We have an edition that's called let's say the precursors of degrowth, and it treats many different ways of thinking. And another comrade called Vincent Gerbet actually proposed to Floréal to write a book together on Bookchin for this specific collection some years ago, before the publication of that book.
Et donc, après les présentations du livre, j'ai été demandé pour qu'ils en sachent davantage, ils voulaient en savoir davantage sur l'œuvre de Murray Bookchin, sur l'écologie sociale et le communalisme. Et on a fait plusieurs rencontres internationales avec les Kurdes et les zapatistes. La première a eu lieu à Lyon en 2017. Après, c'était Bilbao 2019. Et on en a fait une autre, je crois. Il me semble qu'il y en a eu une troisième. Oui, à Liège, bien sûr, Liège.
So
En 2020, 2019. Non,
So-
c'est en 2009, enfin, peu importe.
from that first book, there was more interest in the French community to learn about Murray Bookchin, so and the ideas of ecology and communalism. So basically, created a network that organized several events in the French-speaking world. So one of them was in Liège, another one was in Bilbao, and another one was in Lyon. And so these events were gathering also communalists with Kurdish communities and Zapatistas as well. No?
Et donc, je me suis dit, j'ai vu un peu ce qui se passait en France, en Espagne, en Belgique, partout, et il y avait des idées comme la décroissance, il y avait des luttes souvent, et puis il y avait des manifestations, des batailles, il y avait aussi des gens qui étaient dans comment dire, dans les alternatives, hein, AMAP ou communauté, autre
Yeah.
chose, mais
So
pas de mouvement.
So back then, yeah, the panorama was so a lot of degrowth thinking, a lot of different struggles, a lot of different initiatives. AMAP, well, ZAD, we talked about a bit. So there was a lot of different things, but they were not a unified movement. Let's say of this whole well, these many initiatives, no?
Et donc, j'ai écrit ce livre. En la première partie, j'ai essayé de bien expliquer qu'est-ce que c'est que la démarche de Murray Bookchin, parce que moi, elle m'avait influencé énormément. Je viens d'une tradition anarchiste espagnole, anarcho-syndicaliste, et j'ai vu qu'il y avait des éléments très parallèles à la pensée de Bookchin. Par contre, d'autres qui n'étaient... Bookchin avait beaucoup avancé par rapport à cette tradition.
So that's why in that context he decided to write the book. So with two sections, and the first one is really dedicated to telling the story of the thought of Murray Bookchin, because in the context of Ferrer's education, political education, coming from an anarchist tradition in Spain, especially in the anarcho-syndicalist tradition, no? He was noting that there was obviously similarities, and Bookchin was interested in obviously the Spanish anarchists, but also a lot of dissimilarities. So the first part is kind of treating that history, no? Of thoughts and distinctions.
Par exemple, ce qui m'avait frappé, c'est le côté politique, justement, de Murray Bookchin, qui avait toujours évité, les anarchistes ont toujours évité le politique. Et ça, pour moi, c'était important. C'est un pas de géant pour moi, parce que, justement, la cause de ce manque de perspective politique, les anarchistes en Espagne ont perdu, à quelque part, ont perdu la guerre, ont perdu la révolution. Je pèse mes mots, c'est pas des blagues. C'est parce que les anarchistes espagnols ont participé au gouvernement que, par faute d'alternatives politiques, qu'ils ont accepté les conditions aussi bien des sociaux-démocrates que des communistes, finalement, et ils ont trahi leur propre mouvement.
So one of the main difference, again, with the thought of Bookchin compared to anarcho-syndicalists of Spain was really to bring a political alternative, to bring back politics at the center of the thinking. And that's particularly important in that context because, so in the view of Royal, so the anarchists of Spain actually during the Civil War lost precisely because of this lack of, let's say, perspective, political perspective. And so they participated in the government during the Civil War with the Republicans and the communists, and that's what really led them to defeat in the end because they didn't have their own, let's say, political alternative. So that's why it's a big value added in the context of Spain.
Je montre aussi les coïncidences entre Bookchin au niveau même de la pensée. Par exemple, lorsque Bookchin dit les problèmes écologiques plongent leurs racines dans les injustices sociales et dans les dominations, et les dominations sont maintenues par les structures d'exploitation, par l'exploitation, eh bien ça, je pense que les anarchistes déjà avaient fait un pas en Espagne. Et je montre dans mon livre justement que le mouvement anarchiste avait développé déjà un projet écologique. Hein, je pense que Bookchin n'a pas connu. C'est ce qu'on appelle les urbanistes sociaux en Espagne et l'urbanisme social. Et ça, il ne le connaissait pas. Et je pense qu'il aurait été extrêmement content de voir que des anarchistes espagnols avaient fait un pas dans ce sens.
And then another aspect that's important in the book is precisely to also capture what Bookchin maybe didn't see from the Spanish anarchists, which is in particular the aspect of ecology. So really going back to the thesis of social ecology, that social problems are the causes of ecological problems. So one thing to note from the Spanish anarchists that is less known is that they also had already some vision and some proposals, some concrete practices related to ecology, especially in urban spaces, with a movement called the social urbanist that Bookchin maybe didn't know. And so there's also this potential to complete a bit the thinking in that sense. No? So bringing back other references.
Mais je poursuis dans cette première partie du livre, je finis en disant que Bookchin a fait aussi l'étude historique de toutes les révolutions et qu'est-ce qui n'allait pas dans ces révolutions, quels ont été les succès, les belles choses qu'ont réalisé ces révolutions et quels ont été les points sur lesquels ils ont loupé, ils se sont trompés.
Yeah.
Ça, c'est important.
So the book also captures more broadly what the diagnosis of Bookchin about the past revolutions and especially the reasons why they failed, their successes but also their failures, so that to really accomplish this diagnostic, no, let's say of the thinking.
Mais la deuxième partie, maintenant je commence la deuxième partie. Murray Bookchin est arrêté de produire en 2002 à peu près. 2006, il est décédé et il y a des choses qui ont changé, beaucoup de choses ont changé depuis. Alors ça, pour moi, j'ai fait une analyse, je m'appuie sur ce que fait Bookchin. Je reprends la synthèse qu'a fait Bookchin entre la pensée de Marx, incontournable pour comprendre le capitalisme, l'anarchisme qui refuse les dominations et qui refuse l'État, le confédéralisme que propose déjà l'anarchisme que Bookchin va compléter et beaucoup affiner, bon. Et puis l'écologie, donc, qui montre que la diversité, c'est ce qui fait enrichir les écosystèmes, autant au niveau des écosystèmes naturels que la seconde nature qu'est la société. Là, je pense que c'est important de le dire et
So now we enter into the second part that precisely is attempting to not go beyond Bookchin, but also be realistic about the fact that so these ideas were he finished to produce books around 2022, a few years before his death. So there's a necessity, to continually actualize the thinking in that sense, and also to put again the possibilities of this convergence that he brought in his thinking about so Marxism that is really necessary to understand capitalism today, anarchism with its anti-authoritarian tradition, and also politically speaking about the federalist proposals that are already existing well in the movement, and finally obviously the ecology that allows us to understand how we can really go beyond those these forms of domination, and accomplish well this third nature that he thinks in the philosophy, so really trying to put this synthesis in the center.
J'insiste beaucoup sur deux concepts, le pouvoir et le politique. Le pouvoir, c'est le pouvoir de créer, c'est le pouvoir de décider. Tout groupe humain est traversé par le pouvoir. Si on ne le repère pas, eh bien, c'est un problème, parce qu'on n'arrivera pas à le partager. Et ça, c'est important. D'ailleurs, ça rejoint un peu le livre de Pierre Classe, hein, La société contre l'État. Il explique que ça aussi, donc voilà, ça vient confirmer. Mais le politique aussi, c'est le lieu de décision, et il ne faut pas l'oublier. Et c'est pour ça que nous devons récupérer cette dimension politique, non pas la politique, mais le politique, dans ce sens qui est différent. C'est pas le vecteur politique de l'économie politique inventée par le capitalisme, c'est le politique, nous, comme animal politique que nous sommes.
Okay, so now the emphasis is really on two different concepts that really are important to think about the alternatives. So power and politics, no. So power really being in its productive, creative form. So really acknowledging the different forms of power and how we need to reclaim power at the basis of the grassroots level. So that's one dimension. But then really the political dimension in itself is to redefine the political realm, by moving away from the politics of the state and reclaiming, based on that new definition of power, how the political can be so reclaimed at the municipal level, directly democratic level. So really these two different dimensions, power and politics, are at the center of this section.
Alors, je vais essayer d'aller vite parce que je suis trop attardé sur la première partie. Mais la deuxième partie, donc j'essaye de voir quels sont les éléments qui peuvent constituer une force vraiment politique? Et comment j'entends le politique dans ce sens-là? Alors, partant d'une chose, je pars d'un élément et qui est celui de voir quelle est la faiblesse de ce système, non? Quelle est la faiblesse de ce système? Et je continue.
So yeah, so the idea, moving on to more like practical and concrete proposals, is really to look at how do we create from that basis a unified force, a movement that can well do more than the divided elements that we talked about before. So to do that, there is the necessity to really acknowledge the weaknesses of the system that we're fighting against, so that we can exploit them better.
Alors, il y a une phrase de Walter Benjamin que j'aime beaucoup, c'est par le désespoir des autres que l'espoir nous est donné. Et j'ai traduit si tu veux, puis je continue après.
So there is a sentence by Walter Benjamin that says, so it's by the despair of the others that our hope can emerge.
Alors, nous sommes actuellement en Europe, je parle pas seulement en Espagne, en France, que je connais davantage, mais je crois que c'est partout pareil. Il y a des batailles, il y a des luttes, mais ça tourne en rond. C'est une bataille, convergence des luttes. 2 mois après, lutte, convergence de lutte. Pourquoi? Alors là, c'est intéressant. Et parce qu'il n'y a pas de projet. Il n'y a pas de projet politique, il n'y a pas d'horizon, il n'y a pas... Voilà, moi je conçois. La théorie, c'est une lanterne qui va nous apprendre quels sont les problèmes, où sont les problèmes. C'est une lampe qui va nous enseigner où sont les problèmes. Mais la théorie n'est pas suffisante, la pratique. Il y a une dialectique entre la pratique et la théorie, l'une alimentant l'autre. Mais il manque une chose, c'est l'utopie. L'utopie, elle nous sert à avancer. C'est l'horizon. S'il n'y a pas l'utopie, s'il n'y a pas de projet politique, s'il n'y a pas de projet tout court, eh bien, ça tourne en rond, ça se casse la figure. Donc, il nous faut ces 3 dimensions. C'est ça que les anarchistes espagnols avaient réussi à faire, alimenter avec toute une culture qui faisait le lien dans toutes les activités qui étaient menées.
So, and then I think on va peut-être terminer après la dernière. So yeah, that's really the purpose. The main purpose of the book is really to propose, let's say, a vision, an utopia for the different forces, different movements active in the different spaces of struggles or social movements or municipalist platforms. To really work on both this dialectic between theory and praxis, and have a unified, or let's say a coherent and common goal, utopia, so that precisely we can go beyond these constant successes that lead to failure in terms of struggle convergence and different failures of past movements. So
la dernière phrase est finie. Donc, en fait, il y a aussi un grand désespoir. C'est ce que je disais tout à l'heure. Il y a donc un manque d'espoir, un manque de perspective, et les gens sont complètement déprimés. Il y a une dépression terrible. Il y a 30 000 suicides par an au Japon. Les jeunes sont souvent tout seuls de plus en plus. Cette solitude, ce manque de lien, parce qu'il n'y a pas de complicité pour quelque chose qui est terminé. Donc je propose justement que l'on aille voir tous ces gens qui sont dans l'alternative. L'alternative, elle se fait récupérer par le capitalisme. Les limites des luttes, on les voit, les limites des luttes. On les voit constamment, les luttes, les soulèvements de la terre. Waouh, 3 mois après, c'est fini. Donc, il manque ce ciment. Et justement, le politique, c'est d'aller voir les groupes, qu'ils soient dans l'alternative, qu'ils soient dans les luttes, et leur proposer de se réunir sur le public, sur la place publique, et de créer des institutions parallèles à celles de l'État. Et c'est comme ça qu'on va pouvoir créer un mouvement ici, là, là-bas, mais les relier tout de suite et faire un internationalisme, justement, des luttes qui sont pas forcément sous le nom de l'écologie sociale. Les indigènes, les peuples premiers luttent avec leur culture à eux, mais ils peuvent très bien se mettre d'accord avec nous et créer cette internationale.
okay.
Voilà.
Yes. So yeah, to conclude, really the conclusion would really be to so yes, to acknowledge the limits of the movements as they are now, but also acknowledge all the suffering that the system is causing and all the depression and all the loss of hope that there is to really let's say through the book make this common proposal for a platform that would be able to have this unity to really reclaim also the public space. And this federal confederal system will not need to be under the chapel of social ecology or municipalism. Precisely, there has to be this diversity with indigenous people, other ways of thinking, other ways of knowledge. But that would be really the starting point for a more international, new internationalism. So yeah, this is it.
Thanks. So, the last Federico
Yes,
represents.
I think a bit both, but I will start.
Okay.
Okay, and then we go. Okay, so last, this one will be brief. Sorry if it's getting late, but okay, so we wanted to announce again, this is not a book that you can buy yet, but very soon, in 1 year only, so be patient. There will be this is basically the book that comes from the last event last major presential event that we did as TRISE here in Athens 5 years ago. So very briefly, we can talk about two things: the process that led to that book and why it's gonna appear 6 years afterwards. That's an interesting story. And then also a bit about the structure and what the book talks about. No, so what we wanted to highlight as co-editors. So Fede is here. We also edited it with Marci Isabella, that is an artist and pedagogist from the US that is not here today, but made a very nice artwork inside the book, by the way. So we wanted this book. We had a very ambitious project to make a co-editing process, but that would blur really the frontier between editors and authors, this hierarchical decision-making structure that is usually applied not to these projects. So we had a very big co-editing process. Every single chapter was co-edited by all the other authors, at least three or four. So we had this big process ongoing. Then that process kind of got a bit tired in and of itself, and then COVID struck. So we went from there through a no man's land of a few years, struggling with this process, having ultimately to go back actually to a more traditional editing process. So for us, it was a lesson, no, that we can learn from that. Uh, yeah, we also so as Phil actually said earlier today, we the as you see a conference like this can have 30 contributions, and we started with the idea to make a book of 30 contributions. We wanted to leave no one out, and we also wanted every piece to have their own language maintained. So yeah, that was very utopian maybe at the beginning, and that process really got too complicated. So for us, it was a lesson, no, that we will learn from and wanted to share with you now. So ultimately, we found a publisher that is Punctum Books that has a series on ecology. So now it's in a production pipeline. It will come in 1 year. So that's it for the let's say the story. And now we wanted to very briefly tell you what the book is about, no? Because again, as you see, a conference like this, we are going through a lot of different topics, so it can be a challenge to have a coherent book. Actually, it's been comments made by different publishers on along the way. So very briefly, the first section is more theoretical. It deals with social ecology, the link between ecology and democracy. So in that, we also have a contribution that looks at the history of social ecology and how social ecology has influenced social movements in the US, like the anti-nuclear movements, like the Greens. So there is this more historic and philosophical, let's say, section to start with. And then we go down into more concrete cases and concrete examples. We have three main practical sections. So one of them is learning from the Zapatistas and the Kurdish struggle. So as you can imagine, we also had during that conference many different contributions. Some of them were about Kurdish struggle in Turkey, Others were about Kurdish struggle in Rojava. We also had a more comparative discussion on Zapatismo and Kurdish thinking. In the third section, we go back to European context and we focus on municipalism and urban struggles, particularly. So there we have cases, for example, of the Barcelona and their municipalist elected platform, Barcelona en Comú, no? So we have a discussion on that. We also discuss some of the cooperatives initiative that emerged in Greece with the economic crisis in the eight. So discussing successes and failures of these new cooperatives. And then some comparative also analysis on food struggles in the south of Europe. So this also is a section so more on these municipalities and struggles. And the last one is really about social movements, let's say, different alternatives. So we discussed some recent movements. So the Yellow Vest in France, for example, and how actually social ecology influenced the Yellow Vest movement in many different ways that we maybe sometimes don't know about, but that really led to the interesting outcomes of the movement. Then we talk about some climatic movements, youth movements. So Extinction Rebellion, we discuss what is new about them, what is also maybe their potential, and yeah, and then other contributions about care and activism and also more on the Greek cooperative movement. So I think this is what we wanted to share with you. So watch out for the book official launch in 1 year. And yeah, thank you for listening. It's absolutely.
So now, little patience, we prepare for the projection of the movie Beneficiaire.
Mais de manière. Voilà, ce que je racontais, c'est qu'on est parti sur un sujet d'édition. Je pense qu'on a plus réussi. Et avec une coédition. Coédition, yes. Peu soirée, ça. On s'est rendu compte que déjà, côté des auteurs, absolument une motivation à participer.
Direct question. Help me translate. You wrote the book for the social ecology and Pinar Selek wrote the preface. Why you asked Pinar Selek to write the preface?
Pardon, wait, can you repeat?
He wrote the book about the bookchin that I saw, another book that he wrote, and Pinar Selek wrote an introduction.
Marcella.
Pinar Selek.
Pinar Selek.
Yes, of course. Why he asked Pinar Selek to write it?
Si tu me demandes pourquoi tu as demandé à Pinar Selek d'écrire la préface.
Parce que je trouvais que c'était quelqu'un qui était vraiment. On s'est rencontrés. On s'est rencontrés, on a bien communiqué. Elle adorait la révolution espagnole.
No, because actually it was during a conversation. They actually met.
Yeah.
They met. They discussed a lot, and she was telling him how she was really interested in the Spanish anarchism. No, and so I guess from there it emerged the idea.
To do the process. And one more question. How he expects Moray Bookchin's work to resonate within the French left?
Quelles sont tes perspectives sur le potentiel impact de la pensée de Chine dans la gauche?
La gauche, ils ont toujours du mal de sortir des ornières. Je pense que c'est plus dans les mouvements sociaux qu'on peut trouver dans les masquettes. La gauche est désaccréditée en fait. Donc, c'est plus dans les mouvements sociaux. En fait, c'est des gens qui sont favorables à l'écologie sociale nationaliste.
And so the French left basically is still very much limited by its own frameworks and ways of doing. So
Old conventional frameworks.
yes, very conventional and stuff. So it's true that even the population is quite discredited. So really the way through which action thought is going to really have importance is the alternatives is in the the social movements and it is having more and more resonance for that matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, this is really the way more than the left, like the reformist or parliamentarian. That's
Nice.
it's good. Yeah, thanks.
Well, I'm really impressed by your English.
Ah,
Parler l'anglais, super.
ah ouais, ouais. Ah ben,
Vous êtes de quel pays?
moi je suis français, mais j'ai vécu au Canada et en Écosse, donc au final, voilà, l'anglais ça va, je maîtrise.
Mais même au niveau de l'accent et tout, bon.
Ah oui.
Parce que les Français, souvent, ont un accent.
Ah oui, non, ça c'est sûr, ça c'est sûr, ça c'est sûr. Mais c'est un peu spécial parce qu'au final, je suis parti de France à 17 ans, je suis presque pas revenu.
D'accord.
C'est pour ça que ça fait.
Et là, vous habitez en Grèce?
Non, non, maintenant, moi j'habite à Bilbao.
D'accord. Ah oui,
Donc,
d'accord.
ouais.
Federico, you have written to me your mail.
No, not yet.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
If
Ah, it's
that's
okay, look.
okay, εντάξει.
It works,
Ah,
but
σήμερα δεν έχετε δουλειά. Σήμερα είναι Παρασκευή και είσαι...
Εθελότρια είμαι που είμαι.
okay.
Δικό μου θέλω να ανοίξω, δεν μ' αρέσουν τα σχολεία της δηλαδή. Ήμουν καθηγήτρια ξένων γλωσσών, συγχάθηκα το να καλέσω, ξέρετε τι λέτε, ή έρχεται στην τάξη και να μην διαβάζετε μόνο με το κινητό να παίζουν. Μετά σπούδασα προφορική αγωγή και θέλω να ανοίξω διαφορετικές απασχόλησεις. Μαζί με σχολείο νέο όμως. Αυτό θέλω να παλέψω να κάνω. Τελείωσα 3 μεταπτυχιακά σχετικά με διοίκηση και οργάνωση ψυχικών μονάδων, σχολική ψυχολογία και το τρίτο τι ήταν, κοινωνική επιχειρηματικότητα που είναι το κάνω, ας πούμε, η Κινσέτ. Δεν θέλω να δίνω γονιό μου φαίνεται κλοπή αυτό. Είμαι και εναλλακτική θεραπεύτρια, μπορώ να βοηθήσω παιδί με άσθμα, με πολλά αυτά. Εγώ το μεσημέρι